Hey.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. And Sarah, can I also ask you just monitor? I think the waiting room is disabled now, but if you can just monitor that in case anyone's waiting to get in. Perfect. BC, London. Okay, so everyone's sunny but here. Oh, is it
You need
sunny
to
in
move.
LA?
You need to move to the sunny part of the world.
It's truly never where I thought would be associated with the sunny part of the world, but
Mm.
Uh,
maybe I'm missing out. All right. Vancouver Island. Yeah, we have quite a lot of not typically sunny folks here. Sunny. I'm sure you're all sunny folks. I'm not surprised. I think we'll get started, and then as people roll in, they can join us. Welcome and thank you everybody for coming to our second quarterly meetup here at the Center for Digital Wellbeing. We meet quarterly with folks working in the space of digital well-being, those interested, people in the advocate community at large, whatever shape that takes. And so what we really find valuable is hearing from folks in the area on the work that they're doing and some of the knowledge and tools and resources they can share, as well as coming together to have and foster these conversations and this dialogue as a community. I'm Jess. I'm the marketing and events manager here at the Center for Digital Wellbeing, and I'm going to be playing host, or more asking questions and allowing our two fabulous guest speakers to share their work and their experiences. So I will also just introduce our other team members here. Bailey Parnell, who is of course our founder of the Center for Digital Wellbeing, is joining us, and Sarah, who is our communications manager. All of the stuff you see public facing is coming from her. And we are our resource manager will be joining us a bit later, and she's new to our team, so we're very excited. All right, I think, just get us going because I think we're all eager to hear from you both. So I'm gonna turn it over and allow you both to introduce yourselves and your work and your experience. So I'd love to welcome both Mark and Adam here today, and thank you for your time that you're giving to share your work with us. So I'll start with you, Mark. Do you mind just giving us a little bit of an overview of who you are, what you do, what brought you to this space?
Great. I'm a journalist by profession. Did 20 years in journalism, started off in newspapers, magazines, ended up at the BBC, worked in TV, but I loved radio, was where my real passion was. And it was when I was at the BBC, I was trained how to use social media to find news stories in the days when journalists weren't really doing that. Nowadays, of course, that's all they do. But in those days, they weren't really doing that. So that was back in 2010. And I realized the potential of being able to reach out and engage with people over that time. Picked up some really big national stories, and then realized through a conversation in a coffee shop one day that the potential for businesses to use social media to reach out to customers was just enormous, you know, in a social way, not in a purely marketing way, but in a social way. So me and a friend, well, I say a friend, I've met him twice before. We set up what was then one of the UK's first specialist social media consultancy, Status Social. So that was 13 years ago. And then about must be 3 or 4 years into that, we started seeing the effect of social media on young people and realizing that although, you know, social media is an amazing tool for businesses, and we've generated more than £20 million for us and our clients through social media. Our clients have generated that as well as a result of our help with the work with them. The effect on young people was just becoming more and more devastating. So we started doing these pilots into schools, so interactive classroom sessions through our charity Positive Social. Well, it wasn't called that at the time. Kind of tried to get it going. Our business took off, and then ultimately we finally launched Positive Social 2 years ago. We've now got 30 deliverers across the UK. We've already delivered more than 200 sessions, get inquiries every week. The desire for social media education. Not saying, we don't go into schools and say to kids, don't be on social media. We say, you're on social media, so are you? But are you using it appropriately? Are you aware of the addictive nature, and are you living your best lives? And we get them all to make commitments at the end, and they make amazing commitments like, I'm going to stay off Instagram because it makes me feel sad. I'm going to leave WhatsApp groups where I recognize I'm bullying other kids. I'm going to spend more time with my mum and dad because they're more special than my phone. So really, really amazing commitments. And so our ambition is to get into every school in the UK. And we're already getting inquiries actually from other parts of the world asking about it, including America. So you never know, but I'm kind of just focusing just on the UK at this minute while it's still new. Not running before I can walk. Right, running before I can walk. Yes, right, yeah. Right phrase. So that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think you can, run before you walk. I think it's sometimes okay. Like go run full speed. Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. Yeah, running before you can walk. That's kind of that was the brief moment of irony. I had been promoting this event, and I of course forgot to actually register for the event, and so I couldn't make my way in for 2 minutes. So I apologize for being late. So yeah, I'm Adam, and I am a digital well-being advocate. I'm a former UX designer. Um, my background is in music, visual art. I'm based here in Los Angeles. I'm also a dad to a nearly 9-year-old daughter. She's gonna be turning 9 in like the next 2 weeks. Um, I transitioned into UX during the gold rush in 2014, 2015, simultaneous with becoming, a first-time dad. And at that time, there was a lot of hope and gentle naivety when it came to wanting to make a difference in the field. And I spent up until really the start of the pandemic working as a freelance UXer, mostly, creating exclusive, web portals for, let's say, credit card rewards members to bid on, sort of auctioned off experiences. I'm not going to name that client. I mean, everyone was kind, early on. However, I recognized that once I started to pay attention to how I was feeling myself from a kind of sort of somatic based perspective, not to mention getting in touch with the time well spent folks, which, in turn became the Center for Humane Technology. I recognized at the start of the pandemic that things were going in quite a really intense direction. I found the Digital Wellness Institute in 2020 and took their certificate course. The following year, I took an emotional well-being coaching training with a startup called Wave based out of the Bay Area. And I'm also a 15-year student of Chinese tea culture and have brought the experience of tea into really the notion of workplace wellness. So I bring tea experiences to team building opportunities and wellness activations with corporate clients like Spotify, IDEAL, Children's Hospital LA, Bruce Lee Family Companies, Techstars, and others. And so specifically when it comes to digital well-being and youth, I have a particularly interesting skin in the game being a parent. And so though my shift in the last 5 or so years has been on corporate well-being and employee well-being, slowly but surely I've been focusing on youth, especially mentoring my daughter, recognizing that I am sort of the existing model of what tech use looks like, what healthy tech use hopefully looks like. So uh really experimenting on myself through what I'm learning and absorbing, especially in alliances and partnerships. And so that is my interest and passion going into digital well-being and youth. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. So we tend to sort of try to theme our quarterly meetups. This one, of course, is, as I'm sure everyone knows, based on the event invites and certainly the introductions of Mark and Adam, we are going to take a look at digital well-being and youth and kids and all of the different things surrounding that. But I'd love to just get to kick us off. And I'll start with you, Adam. If you can define digital well-being in your own words, what is it to you? How are you using it in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question because even after 4 years of being in this field, it is quite difficult to really stick to one definition. The thing I like to start with is that digital well-being is kind of a lifestyle. It is the process of going from using tech mindlessly to utilizing it mindfully and recognizing that these are tools that we are using to work towards our health and well-being goals. That is the cut and dry. I'm going to keep it simple definition to the question.
Perfect. And what about you, Mark?
I would describe it as being where you're in control and the technology is not in control.
Hey, I love that. Those will make great sound bites for our socials.
That's what,
Um,
when we go into the schools, that's what we say to the young people. Who do you want to be in control? Do you want to be in control?
Mm,
Or do you want the networks that are making money out of you to be in control?
yeah,
And it's intriguing. They've never thought of it before. They've never realized how much they're being manipulated, which fortunately most of society doesn't realize they're being manipulated.
exactly.
and when they have that realization, Mark, what is it? What are some of sort of the general reactions that they're having as you dive deeper into that concept with them?
It's really interesting when we talk to young people because I think there's this perception that young people want to be on their phones and on social media at all times, but they don't. And when you show them that there's a different way of living, when you show them that they are being controlled, they then pull away, and then they make the commitments. At the end, it'd be very easy. At the end of every session, we might get maybe one kid in every class at most who will say, "I'm not making any commitments to change," they're the renegades.
Mm,
Everyone else is like, oh, God, what am I doing? Why am I spending all my time on my phone? Why am I wasting my life? And they're also as well, they realize when you give them the addiction levels and you talk about dopamine and doctors describe our addiction to social media as that experienced by crack cocaine addicts, the same feeling. When we say that, they realize that's not how they want to live their lives, and so they then start trying to pull away. This is where I suppose the challenge is that how do you then keep on pulling away? But yeah, they don't want to be like that. They don't want to be addicted. They don't want to be controlled. But it's only when you explain it to them that they are, do they actually realize I need to do something about it.
mm. I think your microphone is muted.
Maybe I was unmuted before.
Okay.
4 years after Zoom became hyper popular, and I still can't figure out the mute button. Building off that, Mark and Adam, I'll let you sort of lead first here. We chose the topic of social media and youth today, our digital well-being and youth and kids, because their kids and youth are considered one of the most at-risk groups when it comes to social media, tech, mental health. I'd love for both you and Mark to expand on why that is um, and sort of how you communicate that not just to the youth that you're working with, but sort of the more adults that are helping with that, parents, caregivers, educators, etc.
Mm. So in particular, this last school year, I was focused on uh, our school, our school community, doing quarterly, parent education talks, as well as through other schools and through other um, fellow advocates that are based here in LA. And it's really, it's really humbling to really meet people where they're at. There's what we absorb as thinkers and speakers or podcasters or educators and advocates. There's the work that we're doing, and then there's meeting people where they're at. Whether I'm a fellow parent in a community, or a facilitator, or a coach, or an educator. And so in particular, through my experience, it hasn't been a lot of youth specific education. It's really been through kind of osmosis through parents. So I'm working with parents, I'm speaking to fellow parents, um, and constantly sort of building that bridge between what the current research is, what's kind of happening on a day-to-day basis, and where it kind of distills down to people. Um, it seems as though, given the recent bombshells in recent years through the whistleblowers that have come forward, um, focusing on youth is 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 imperative. And also forgive me for not being so poignant at the moment, because it's like first thing in the morning for me here in LA. Haven't had my caffeine yet, so I apologize. But it seems as though that being sort of youth led in this field is extremely important, because there's so much at stake. We're talking about future, like future users, people like, given my case, I'm 40 years old right now. I'm gonna be 41 in the fall. I signed up for Facebook in 2007, I believe. I left the platform in exactly 5 years ago, pretty much to the month, for like a lot of personal reasons that I had come to. And so when I think about the journey that I went through in particular, and I work towards empathizing with, the youth that I'm connecting with, if not directly with them, then through their parents, there's so much to be um, heard and listened to and understood. And um, it's hard to be doing that on a community based level, on a societal level, when things are turning over so quickly, when legislation is far behind what should be happening in real time. And so, I mean, I want to start there. I want to pass the baton to Mark. So it's it's just really beyond me, considering my position as a parent, and as a community member here, in our school systems. So I'll bookmark there.
I think it's also because you look at the young people in their brains and how they're still evolving all the way through into their teenage years.
Mm,
So why on earth do we give them a tool which will then, damage their brains, that will then make them anxious and depressed and sleep deprived? Why do we do that? And it's interesting. I mean, I've got a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and and it's interesting. My own fathering of them and helping them has been different for every one of them. I mean, for starters, when my 19-year-old was 6 years ago, I don't think I really understood, but we
mm,
still put things in place. And I remember saying to him, he wasn't allowed to have social media till he was 13 years old. And when he
mm,
was 18, he said to me, "I'm so glad you didn't let me have social media till I was 13. I remember the day I rushed downstairs and I set up my Instagram account, but I'm really glad I didn't do it before, because I'd seen what it'd been doing to the other guys at school."
yeah.
And when we try and talk to parents, so I was talking to a head teacher today in a school in the UK, and she said, "I would love it if we could change the mindset of parents, but the trouble is most of them aren't bothered.
Mm,
They won't turn up to events. If we did an event like this, they wouldn't turn up, and then it does not interested, and it takes a crisis to make parents realize." So we had a situation involving no, I don't know what grade it will be in the US. It was year threes in the UK, so about 7-year-olds who were on
mhm,
Instagram posting videos, picked up by a predator, met the predator. School went into this big thing. They held an event for parents. Of course, they all came flocking because there was a reason behind it. Before that, everyone thinks it won't happen to my kid, or I'm too busy to do something else about it. Which is why I think okay, it's great to educate parents, and we won't stop doing online parents events and going into schools, but I think it's empowering the children to make good decisions. And people say to me, well, how will you know that you know, when you leave, they're going to actually do something about it? Well, I know some of them won't. I know some of them will make promises and they won't follow up. I know some of them will try their best and then they'll fall away in a few weeks' time. But I know that forevermore, they will remember that session and realize there is another way of choosing how to live life from their devices. So almost like we need to retune their brains into thinking there's another way of using their devices. We need to, and that's through education. That's not through telling them what to do. It's about educating them as parents, it's educating them as in the school system, it's educating them as in government, because the social networks aren't going to change anything anywhere soon. At least not unless they're forced to. But even then, you know, I heard a story the other day about it was an 11-year-old girl who was told she wasn't allowed to go on social media, so she went to the local supermarket and secretly bought a burner phone, which she then used for her social media.
On that note, which is a wild story, like I have a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, and I couldn't imagine in a year or two him being on those devices, and yet I can see him on his device and how easily it comes to him to play a game or things like that he's allowed to currently do. What do you think are some of the, you know, you spoke to the social media companies and certainly the legislation or the policy catch up. What are some of the biggest obstacles currently standing in the way of youth and digital well-being?
I mean, I think, Mark, you really hit it on the head in the sense of like there is a real fundamental lack of media literacy. You know, we talk about there's DARE, there's drug awareness education, there's sex ed. Maybe there's other kind of more specific nuanced things like hygiene and sleep and exercise, right? But there's a real vacuum. There's, I don't know what the right metaphor is, but there is a very real lack of media literacy education. And it's almost as though, you know, very early on, you have, like, for instance, I remember watching with, you know, Sesame Street with my daughter. And we would start on the older episodes and I noticed how quickly Elmo went from talking to computer to talking to Smarty. They were like, there was no transition. It was just kind of like in a snap of a finger, suddenly he's only talking to a smartphone. And I think there's a huge opportunity there, you know, not just for fellow parents and for educators, but like really for society at large to start to bring their own language into, like, you know, helping kids understand what is happening, why it's important to make a different decision, and what the real risks are. You know, there's the kind of the hypothetical risks. We do speak in a lot of metaphor. I mean, I appreciate what Jonathan Haidt said about, you know, the internet is a place. If you as a parent are proactively protecting your child from walking, you know, a mile down the road to the store, in case there are bad actors somewhere along the path, why would we give them a device and free reign on the internet to do basically the same thing?
I think as well that the truth is that real delicate balance, isn't it, between, you know, being allowing us to choose, make our own choices, and then legislation to try and clamp down on commerce. And I can't really see, this is where I can't really see an answer through that. I mean, there's obviously lots of talk, isn't there, about making the networks more accountable, about stopping them from having, you know, under 18s on there. But we know kids are clever; they'll get around it. So and in terms of social media, from a marketing point of view, it's just massive, isn't it? And nobody's going to be saying, "Oh, great, now let's stop social media because I'm happy not making more profits." You know, there's no. That's why I think education is so key, and it probably will. I do think I'm seeing more turning points. It's interesting. I would say, you know, it was interesting the timing of us getting positive social really going, because I think if we'd have started it before 2 years ago, I don't think we'd have got the traction. I think in the last 2 years we've seen, like, for instance, there's a big campaign in the UK at the moment called smartphone free childhood, where they're trying to get, no giving children no smartphones until they get to 18. I mean, it's going to work for some, it's not going to work for others. But the fact that it's got so much publicity, a lot of mums are leading these campaigns, which is great. So they get more news coverage because it's led by a mum rather than a dad. If it's a dad, no, they're not so interested. But mums, they are great. You know, the more power to the elbow, they get themselves on the. So there's definitely this, I would say, a kind of a slight culture shift. And maybe there'll come a point when, you know, social media is seen as being as bad as smoking or as gambling or as drugs. Who knows? It's going to have to get to somewhere, isn't it? Because otherwise the damage is going to be, you know, it's going to be rubbish. And actually another little anecdote, which I think illustrates this, why society needs to think about the way we're handling social media. So I'm going to be going into an accountant's in a few months' time, a few weeks' time, to talk to their employees about how they need to get more of a balance with their social media and devices. And they told me how they'd had to let go of one of their members of staff, a younger member of staff, because he couldn't stop his phone long enough to do the account. And you think that's going to be an endemic. We're going to have loads of people who are going to go into work and they will not be able to do the job properly. They won't be able to work in factories because they'll be too busy looking at their phone. They won't be able to work in offices because they'll be too busy looking at their phone. And therefore, then we'll see productivity and we'll see mistakes. And it will all be down to the fact that as a society, we're not taking enough concern over addiction to to devices.
That's an interesting example, and I think it relates back to your the UK campaign around no screen time before 18 or no phones before 18. I'm just going to go over to a couple of questions. One that I think is really relevant here. Bailey again sends her thanks, and I'm sure she's very eager to connect with both of you offline. But her question is that many parents ask us the age-old question about how much time should they allow their kids to spend on social media. We tell them it's the quality of the time that seems to matter more, but they aren't always able to distinguish good quality time from bad quality time for their kids. What advice would you give? Recognize the reality that you've said, Mark, of no screen time or no phones before 18 is an unrealistic goal. What advice would you give them in terms of good versus not so good time?
What I tell you what, I'm gonna why don't Adam, you give your views first, because it gives me enough time to go on our blog, on our website, and there's a blog from a pediatrician who gave us times of how long you should allow for each age, which will probably be a great source of, and I'll put it into the chat as well.
Okay. Yes. And because I need to learn, I need to continue learning as well. I mean, I am, I'm of the particular mindset as a parent and as an educator that at this point, at this age in particular, again, she's turning 9 in a few weeks' time. I do believe that up until about somewhere between 13 and 16, there should be like essentially minimal to none. If it's going to be happening, it's in a kind of a family experience, much like how we used to gather around the TV to like watch a movie or a program like together, growing up. And so a lot of that in our house, happens much the same way. My partner and I we might share some things regarding social media with her, but it's going to be happening through us only. And so when it comes to her in particular, there isn't even a request like, when do I get my phone, or when can I sign up? Like, she knows of Instagram, she knows of TikTok, but there isn't this language of like, when can I get that? When can I have that? Because it's been this kind of collective shared experience. So it's hard to proclaim, I believe parents should do XYZ when it comes to certain ages. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that, more complex. However, again, where there are opportunities to educate communities, parents, educators on particular stages of development, if we would say, because things are happening here and they're changing here, and it's really, really volatile. There's the wait till eighth crowd. There's MAMA, which is Mothers Against Media Addiction. There's Hates Book, Anxious Generation. There's a lot of, and then there's, the Surgeon General just recently, this week, recommending that social media be given a warning label or something to that equivalent. So it's a really volatile and kind of heavily fermenting, space, a lot of discussion. I do believe that, again, having a social media account at 13 to me feels young. Um, what I lead with, in discussion, especially sharing it with, community members here is, let's gather together, or let's sort of embrace these kind of friend groups or these peer groups through some other channel, not to be mediated through social media. We can have a group FaceTime, it sounds kind of hokey in a way, but I feel like I'm ranting on this answer, so I'm gonna hand over to Mark. Ready for that blog post.
Dr. Sanjeev Nichani, OBE, he's a consultant pediatrician at Leicester Children's Hospital. So the blog I put in the chat is about the stages of children's development that he wrote for Positive Social. So he says screen time from birth to 24 months, there shouldn't be any at all. Keep your phone out, even out of sight, which I think is intriguing. Keep your phone out, even out of sight. Then he talks 2 to 5 year olds should get an hour or less of screen time per day. So this is screen time, not just, this is about all of the screen time, not just phones. So, and he says the same as what you just said there, Adam, about, get them in real life play, not on the screens. But then go for a bigger screen if in terms of rather than the small ones. The smaller the screen, the more likely it's going to damage them. So whatever that might look like. And then 6 to 10 year olds, again, the whole thing about less than 2 hours a day, 2 to 3 hours on weekends. 11 to 17 year olds, he then says 2 hours a day on weekdays and up to 4 hours on weekends. So treat it as a privilege rather than a right. And I think that's the key, isn't it? In some ways, it's not a right. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I've got a friend of mine who if her children are ever, badly behaved, the first consequence is always a ban on screen time, because they know it's the thing that actually hurts them the most, and is the thing they want to avoid the most. But I always think as well that you said there a really good word there, Adam, nuanced. So my 19-year-old, very mature, very with it. He was the one who was giving advice to the kids in his school about how they should be on social media and how they should, how to behave on it. My 17-year-old, young for her age, wasn't allowed on social media until she was 17. And even then we still check it on a regular basis, and we have conversations with her, and she occasionally gets bans because of overstepping the mark. But we need to, because we know that if we allowed her free reign, she would do things that are inappropriate. And then my 10-year-old, she's decided she does not want to have a smartphone until she's 15. She'd rather have a dumb phone and a tracker. So that's what we're getting for her. That's great. Unfortunately, in her class, loads of other kids are already getting phones. But the good thing is, at the moment, she's standing her ground and she's saying, this is the way I want it to be. So all we can do is support her. But I think, and I would say with Amy, my youngest, she's probably had the most soaking of what we're doing. So she gets it.
Yeah.
She gets the problem, and she doesn't, and also she loves life. And I think that's something because we're not on our phones, because as parents, we've really focused on getting our own phone time down. I mean, mine was about, only about 6 months ago. I'd come out of a positive social session feeling amazing, and then feeling terribly guilty that I was still spending too much time on social media and my phone. And then I'd make, then finally I feel like I've kind of, I've cracked it. My phone use has gone from 3 hours a day down to less than half an hour on most days, or a lot of days. So therefore then Amy doesn't see me on my phone. So therefore then we doing other things. So when we go out, we take a pack of cards with us and we play games. When we do things outside, we go out for the day, we eat lots of cake. I mean, we get fat, but we don't get addicted to social media. Isn't it that thing about setting examples, isn't it?
Yeah. And I love that as you describe that, and how I'm hearing what you're saying, and how it resonates in my experience with Cora. It's really humbling for parents to recognize, we need to, like that metaphor, when you're flying, right? You get the safety message. You need to put your mask on first before you help someone else with their oxygen mask. We really do need to focus, as much as there's a lot of much needed attention towards our youth's screen time or social media use. We really need to equally turn that focus inward, as well. Like we constantly need to be doing the work because it is a two-sided coin.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when we do parent sessions, the parents, and it's the first, I don't know, 7/8 of it are all about, helping your child, and the last bit is all about your own usage and the
Mm.
commitments that all the parents make is to spend less time on their own social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, my 2-year-old doesn't have a lot of words, but no phone mommy is one that he throws together.
Hmm.
So in a sense, he is practicing a lot more safe social than I am. On that note, just kind of, I think that I had a look at the blog. I think it's great. I also love that he recognizes sort of the parent's own sanity and flexibility, and like if you have a long flight, do not beat yourself up, because
Hmm.
Mm.
there's a ton of parent guilt involved in this as well. I think about both my kids and sort of the trends that are going on in terms of what they watch and what kinds of activities they're doing on their iPad, um, in terms of quality, not quantity of screen time. And one of the things, on new mommy blogs or whatever is this rise in discussion of Miss Rachel or Baby Bear versus, Coco Melon. um I noticed the difference when my 7-year-old is playing, one of his sort of brain games versus when he's on YouTube. um I wonder if you're able to talk a bit to sort of quality versus quantity of screen time, and then I have one more question from the chat before we do a breakout.
Mm.
Yeah.
What is
Mark, you
quality?
got three. Yeah, you got three kids, Mark. I want
Yeah.
to.
Well, I mean, I suppose I think about even with TV,
Yeah.
if we let our when our children use catch up and they use the BBC iPlayer, they get a higher quality than when they watch Pop UK. You could, it's all about what, there's
Yeah.
different quality, but we also know there's a level of entertainment. I think it's still more about the amount of time you let them spend,
Yeah.
with that balance. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to let them watch, things that are, that are bad for them, and that's another thing we obviously check, and we have,
Yeah.
safeguards on our TVs and stuff like that for those sort of things. So one of the things actually rules we have in the house, is that we have a no YouTube scrolling rule. You can go on YouTube to watch a particular video because it's a video you've designated as being one you want to watch, but you're not allowed to go on YouTube and just click next and click next and click next.
Yeah.
We have a
Yeah.
no selfies rule. Not allowed to do selfies on social media, because again, there's just so yeah, I think you can have rules inside social media, not just say, okay, when you're 13 you can go on social media. I think you can then say, okay, well let's talk about what's good for you. So
Mm.
we talk about why selfies are banned in our house. you know
Mhm.
they're not healthy, are they? They're not healthy, so why would we allow selfies?
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Mark. I'm gonna pull another question here from Heather. She says her kids are 10 and 13 and are really starting to get into YouTube. She wants to encourage them to follow creators, but is finding it hard to keep them in a certain area without having to basically watch them at all times. Any suggestions for safer surfing on YouTube in that context?
There are some parental things, aren't there, on YouTube? I can't remember what age. I mean, certainly for the 10-year-old, they will click into place. You can go into your settings and choose things, but I don't think you can be. I'm not sure it can be as specific as to say creators, or in fact, I'm pretty sure it won't be doing that, on there. I mean, I suppose you could. I often think with children, it's about sitting down with them and saying, right, okay, what do you think's good for you to watch on YouTube? Right, okay, well, how about we agree then that's the kind of stuff you watch? And then the only other thing to do is if you're going to give them that free reign, then is then just to check their history and just see if that is what they're watching. And if they're not, then you have another conversation, and then you have another conversation, and you have another conversation. It's unfortunately, as a parent, as any parent will know, you never fix it all on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th conversation. It is an ongoing thing. And whenever you let your guard down, and we've had that with our middle daughter, we've let our guard down, and then suddenly we realize to our horror that she's been doing things on there that we didn't know. So it's
Mm.
just, you've got to all. Sadly, I say sadly. That's what kids do, don't they? They push the boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true. I mean, actually, that is as difficult as it is, as you know, if you have a 10 and 13-year-old, again, I have an almost 9-year-old, but the fact that it's a constant conversation. My daughter is really into playing Minecraft right now, but only because she's playing it with one of her besties from school. So the fact that it's like a social and creative kind of exploratory endeavor. So she'll come to me, and she loves knitting as well. We're in like a Waldorf inspired public charter school, and so like there's a lot of handwork based stuff. So she'll come to me with requests, basically. I want to find out this certain type of knitting, or I want to find out this Minecraft sort of information. We basically, like, it's a conversation. It comes as a request. We have a conversation about it. We set the limits. There isn't like a click through. There's no recommendations. It's really just utilizing, as imperfect as they are, the parental controls, whether it's within the YouTube app or within screen time in general. And you're basically you're the captain of the airplane. You have to keep in mind all of the modules, you know, all of the systems. It can be very exhausting, but it is important because, again, all of the responsibility sits on our shoulders, for better or for worse. So having it be a conversation, having it be a request, at least it instills that idea of, I'm using this for this reason, for this purpose, for this intention, for this motivation, as opposed to just free reign.
Mm.
I
Mm.
think
I
that's
love the
great.
idea, actually, Jess, of you having a conversation with your 2-year-old and agreeing phone boundaries for the house.
Mhm.
Okay, so when is mummy allowed her phone at the dinner table? Do you think that's going to be a good idea or a bad idea? Is anybody allowed the phone? And then she'll say yes or no. Clearly, I am hopefully she'll say no. And again, with that 10 and 13-year-old with you, Heather, it's actually when is that? What are the house rules of when we're allowed our phone? What are the house rules of how much time we spend on social media? What are the house rules of what we should be watching? And let's agree as a household so we all take ownership. And do you know what? It can be hard because, well, one of the crunch points for me was when Amy put a sign on her door, fed up of me checking my social media or my emails while I was waiting, she was getting dressed, waiting for this, to read the bedtime story. She put a sign on her door saying no phones.
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, it's getting bad, isn't it, when they do that?
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting. It's building a lot of skills, not just sort of our literacy and our ability to, or for kids to be on social media, but and on screens, but being part of a collaboration or a leadership process in the home, I think is a really interesting way to go about that. I have two more questions that I'll sort of combine into one because I think they're a little bit similar. Um,
Mm.
and now there we go. Thank you everyone again for being so active in the chat. On that sort of intentional use, and on that note of, we're all here because we actually believe that there's, social media, digital well-being is critical, and that technology can actually advance and enhance our lives, not just detract from it. With Seema here is saying she works for Samaritan, so they're a suicide and self-harm prevention charity. We know from research and talking to people using our services that being online can be a lifeline.
Mhm.
That to so many young people, especially those from marginalized communities. How do you encourage digital well-being without demonizing the internet, which in turn can mean removing something that is vital for many? So how do we promote digital well-being and the safe and smart and intentional use of technology without demonizing it to the point where people feel bad for using it?
Yeah, no, that's a really important question. I think considering digital well-being, within that context, when you're using the tool, the platform, whatever it may be, and then you recognize, I'm having a certain emotion, a thought, I'm in a certain mind state, I'm aware of my heart rate or something. That could be an opportunity to use the tool to reach out to my community, my qualified mental health professional, a lifeline, something, as opposed to like just scrolling within the hopes that you might feel differently. Having it be a critical lifeline, at times. But I think it begins with that, I guess that practice of like some some type of self-awareness. I'm feeling this way now that I'm coming to this tool, or I'm coming to this platform feeling this way. And so because I'm feeling this way, I want to, I want to reach out or communicate or connect to my lifeline or my support system. So it's almost like a framing thing to just kind of start with there.
That's great. Thanks. And I'll throw it to you, Mark, for one last comment, and then we'll do sort of a 5-minute breakout.
Yeah, I suppose I think about my own time on when I go on when I was spending a lot of time on my phone, that I'd spend a certain amount of time and then I started feeling low. I started feeling like I could feel it affecting me. And that's that, as Adam was saying, it's that moment when you realize you need to do something different. And I think with people who feel very marginalized is what are the other avenues that can help you feel more alive? I know that if I go for a walk, or if I put on some worship music and I sing, I know that it will lift me and I will feel so different. So what are the other things? We don't, to rely on one channel as being our avenue I think it's dangerous. If they disappear, or they're not really real, or it's not deep, they're not deep relationships, then I don't think it's good. I suppose a good example of that would be when I moved to the city where I live now. We moved, and our children were like 6 and 4, and most people had established friendship groups. It was really hard to break down, and I started engaging people on Twitter and found a group of other people there who also felt a bit lonely and wanted to reach out. So we turned those Twitter meetings into real life meetings, and we became great friends, and here we are 15 years later, we're still good friends. That's where digital and can really enhance lives.
Thanks. Yeah, we love using IRL in real life to get
Mhm.
people off of those very essential communities that they're building online, but hopefully can transcend into offline communities as well. And I think just to wrap up before we break out too is noting that being critical of things and looking for ways that we can use things more beneficially and with less harm um, is not the same as sort of villainizing it. And I think that's where the work that we're all doing comes in, and that we believe that there are all of these really great positives to not just social media, but to the advancement of technology. And it's working with folks, youth, kids, teenagers, parents, educators, governments, corporations, to figure out how we move forward, and truly how we're critical of the use, but how we create more advancements for it. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to put us out into breakout rooms just to do sort of some more one-on-one smaller chats just about some of the stuff that resonated with us here today. And then we can come together to wrap up. So I'm just gonna put us in here now. Thank you. All right, we're just a couple minutes away. I wanted to thank everybody today for attending and for putting your questions in the chat and engaging. And hopefully you had some great conversations and connections in our short but sweet breakout groups. Thank you hugely, Adam and Mark, for your time and your thoughts and your sharing your experiences today. We really appreciated it. We will send a recording out of this to everybody, and Mark and Adam will connect with you and grab a couple of some of the resources and links that you've shared here today, so we can make sure that's included as well. And we have our next quarterly meetup scheduled for September, and I will put the link in your follow-up emails to that if you're interested. Other than that, thank you on behalf of the Center for Digital Wellbeing, and we look forward to connecting offline and online. Bye, everyone. Have
Thanks,
a great
Jess.
day, evening,
Thank you so
morning.
much.
You can stop the recordings there.